Hey everyone, I'm Jess and I'm here with Nix.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us on this segment of Based on Facts, where I wanted to share some fun details about a man who's inspired my costume for tonight's Halloween party. So if I'm looking a little bit deranged with some red in my hair, don't mind me. I'm gonna post some complete Pennywise looks on our social media account. So the man I'm referring to is none other than Stephen King himself. We all know him as the king of thrills and chills or the master of horror. But some things I learned about him was that he had an interesting childhood. Some would say they were relatable to a certain degree. Aside from normal hardships that many single parent families endured, King's young life was also full of traumatic events that may have formed many of his stories. King has said that he didn't believe that some of the facts about his upbringing had anything to do with the stories, but it's arguable that his childhood formed the basis for much of his work. So, starting off at a very young age, the age of 2, King's father, Donald King, casually told his wife that he was going to the store for a pack of cigarettes, but he never came back. So he was abandoned, and that was back in 1949. King was left alone with his mother and brother David. The loss of King's father put the family in a dire financial hardship for the next decade or so, and they were forced to move around a lot. So that was pretty triggering. He was pretty, at the age of 2, the abandonment issues that he saw in the midst of that, really, not being able to understand that at 2 years old develops a
Yeah.
lot, you know, into your adulthood. So, moving on to the age of 4, he witnessed the passing of one of his friends. Thought this was really interesting. And he shared this in his exact words. Um, the event occurred when I was barely 4. According to mom, I had gone off to play at a neighbor's house, a house that was near a railroad line. About an hour after I left, I came back, she said, as white as a ghost. I would not speak for the rest of the day. I would not tell her why I'd not waited to be picked up or phoned that I wanted to come home. I would not tell her why my chum's mom hadn't walked me back and had allowed me to come home alone. It turned out that the kid I had been playing with had been run over by a freight train while playing on or crossing the tracks. My mom never knew
Wow.
if I had been near him when it happened, but I have no memory of the incident at all, only of having been told about it some years after the fact. It's wild.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
4 years old. So, my guess is that he was severely traumatized by what he had
Yeah.
seen, and that had some sort of dissociative amnesia. So, he doesn't remember it, but the fact that he came back white as a ghost just tells you that he had seen something. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
come back looking like that and not being able to speak if you hadn't seen something.
Yeah.
So another incident at the age of 4 happened with a crazy babysitter lady who had an interestingly odd fascination with tickling him and then knocking him down and then tickling him again. But it gets weirder. So after feeding him around 7 eggs all at one time, King vomited all over the floor. Rather than taking care of him, the babysitter became really aggressive, and she hit him upside the head and locked him in a closet. And the mother came home and then discovered the babysitter asleep on the couch, and King was still locked in the closet, covered in his own vomit. So,
Wait,
like
how old was he again?
4 years old.
Wow.
So, 3 huge events happening in these pivotal years of your development.
Yeah.
That's, like
Yeah.
huge. So, I mean, to say that he doesn't think that, any of that attributed to some of his writings. It may be that like he may not remember these things. I mean, I know that I like don't remember a lot of my childhood as well. Um, I know a lot of people don't, but I think it's because we block certain memories out for good reason. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll continue. So he started writing when he was 6 or 7 years old, which is pretty cool. Um, he
Crazy.
said that, yeah, he said that film was also a major influence on him. He loved watching movies, and he can remember a time when his mom took him to Radio City Music Hall to see Bambi. Um, and that really stood out to him, like the size of the place and the forest fire in the movie. That made a huge impression on him. So when he started to write, he would write the images because that's all he knew at the time. So I thought that was especially interesting because great writers are usually natural observers of everything
Yeah.
around them. Some call it external collecting, where you write down like what you see in words or images.
Hmm.
It's something I find that I do myself a lot as well. You know, I don't know. But have you ever done that
Yeah.
before where, yeah, okay. So I thought that was really neat. And so that was definitely something he was onto, like something he was onto right there
Yeah.
with his
I didn't
work.
know that that had a name. What was it called again? Internal what?
Um, well, some people call it internal or external collecting.
Oh,
So like your
external.
external, yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
external thoughts, and you collect them and then you turn them into images or words.
Interesting.
Yeah. So King was obsessed with the dark side of life, and I think you're really going to like this one. So, especially the afterlife. So, he didn't think he had much of a future and assumed he'd expire after a couple of decades. He was
Mm.
terrified and fascinated by death, and he thought he wouldn't make it to reach past the age of 20 years old, which
Oh
is crazy,
wow.
right?
Yeah.
Because we just had this conversation like last week, and right? You
Yeah.
thought the same thing growing up, right?
Yeah. Mine was 30.
30? Yeah. It's
Yeah. So
wild.
I don't even need a plan because I won't make it.
Yeah. And he had the same terrified like thought in his mind. Didn't go too much into detail why, but he
Yeah.
just thought like 20 was that age where I'm not going to make it past that age, but I mean, he's still around
Hmm.
alive and kicking, doing good
Yeah.
things. So, and his mother was like a huge influence on all things horror and scary stuff. And that's why he believed he got most of his influence from his mother, because his mom
Hmm.
used to listen to a horror program called Dimension X. I've actually never heard of this, but he
Me
would sneak.
either.
Yeah, but I never. He would sneak out of his room and go and listen to it without her knowing. And he said it would scare him, like really, like scare him. But he enjoyed the feeling of being like terrified. He loved that feeling. So I thought that was
Same.
really interesting. Yeah. So that's a lot of, you know, his growing up. There was a lot more to it where, when he was a kid, he was, a husky kid. And it talked about like how he felt different than the other kids. A lot of people couldn't relate to him. He was always picked last, to play games. He had friends, but they couldn't, you know, he just felt different. I think it's
Yeah.
because of the way he thought, the way he did things. And he was just, like
Yeah.
more so in his head than more kids. I get
Yeah.
that. I used to be like that too.
Yeah, me too. I totally
Yeah.
understand that. I think you and I have actually talked about like stuff like that before.
Yeah. And it's an interesting and hard thing when, growing up you don't feel understood. And
Yeah.
even as an adult, you still don't. But then you're okay with it, and it becomes your fact of being unique. And
Yeah.
you're okay with it. So, I mean, now he's definitely, you know, his uniqueness shines in his
Yeah.
work. So, for sure. So, moving on to his career, in 1973, King sold his first novel, Carrie, the tale of the tormented teen who gets revenge on our peers. So, this book actually became a huge success after it was published the following year, and it allowed him to start writing full time. It was later adapted to a film, like the big screen.
Mhm.
And then more popular novels soon followed, including Salem's Lot, The Shining, Firestarter, Cujo, and It. And then, of course, there's like a huge list of other great books that are now pretty much movies that we all know and love today. And I won't get into that list because it's ginormous.
Too,
But I
too
wanted to ask
much.
you, like, yeah, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite Stephen King movie?
The Shining.
The Shining? Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. That's good because actually I was going to talk about The Shining and the Stanley Hotel in which The Shining inspired. So the Stanley Hotel was the inspiration of The Shining because Stephen King and his wife were guests there back in 1974. They were said to have been the only guests there prior to the winter closure, and they stayed in room 217. They spent one night there where he had a vivid nightmare of his son, who was 3 at the time, being chased down the long corridors of the hotel. So the next day, they checked out. It was said that after one cigarette, after awakening the nightmare, King had mapped out the entire plot, which would become The Shining. So I thought that was really interesting how quickly The Shining plot
Came
took
to him.
place. Yeah, like he was
Yeah.
pretty quick with that one. So interestingly enough, like room 217 is now one of the most requested rooms to stay in to this day because obviously The Shining was inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's been multiple other accounts of strange things happening inside the room specifically. Did you know that Dumb and Dumber was partially filmed there?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the scene where Lloyd and Harry have a bunch of money in the suitcase and they stay in the
Okay.
fancy hotel,
Yes.
it was shot inside room 217.
Really?
Yeah, at the
I had
Stanley
no
Hotel.
idea.
I
I
did
had
not know
no
that
idea.
either. Okay, and so apparently while filming, Jim Carrey ran out of there so fast after just a few hours of being in there because he was so spooked by something that he wouldn't return until the very last minute to finish the scene. Like it's still a mystery as to what happened. I couldn't find any information as to like what happened, what he saw, what he experienced because he wouldn't talk about it.
Ah. Oh, you know it's something crazy.
Yeah.
And
I was
not
like,
be like,
if Jim Carrey was freaked out, you know it was bad. I'm just saying.
yeah.
Just saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to know what it is.
Yeah. It's wild. It's so crazy.
Jim
Um,
Carrey, tell us.
I know. Tell us your
We need to
secret.
know.
It's so crazy. So
Wow.
I wanted to give a little bit of history on this hotel because, there's been so many different reports that have happened. And I could like list a bunch of other things like with different, you know, cases of like, different things that have happened with guests and, even just the hotel staff, but it's too long to mention. But the Stanley
Yeah.
Hotel is actually a 140 room colonial revival hotel based out of Estes Park. I think that's how you say it, Colorado.
Your guess is
And
as good as mine.
yeah, I'm just going based off of how I see it. So we're gonna go that way.
Yeah.
It's about 5 miles from the entrance of Rocky Mountain National Park. So if anyone wants to go check it out, let me know how it is. Sounds
We
interesting,
have to go.
right?
We
I,
have to
I
go.
know. Sounds super fun. It
Yeah.
opened on July 4th, 1909, as a resort for the upper class Easterners and a health retreat for sufferers of pulmonary tuberculosis. That is super random
Oh,
and a
wow.
mixture of things like going on there.
And that's a
So,
lot of dark energy, like the
right.
suffering, and if people passed on the, like, whether you believe in the paranormal, that whole stuff. But yeah, that's a lot of darkness.
Yes. And this hotel has been named the most haunted place in America because here's another interesting fact. It's apparently built on a foundation of quartz that apparently attracts all kinds of spiritual activity. So if you believe in that stuff, but built on a foundation of quartz, I don't know exactly what that means. Was it like the foundation as in like they poured foundation, or there was quartz rocks
Under.
inside, underneath? Okay, just
Yeah.
wondering. I was
I
like,
I think
why?
Yeah, I only know that because my mom used to work for a builder, and before they started building they found out that it wasn't quartz, but it was, I don't remember what the rock's called, but I know if I explain it you'll know what it is. It's like the white rock with like the black speckles, and then when you move it like this it's kind of shiny, and it's like, ugh, I don't know how else to describe it. It's white with like black dots, like Dalmatian rock.
I
And
can
under,
picture the rock. I don't know what it's called. Like I'm
yeah,
not
me
a
either. But all underneath was, and I'm talking like the earth was it. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. They had
yeah,
to
okay.
bring in dynamite and blow it up just to be able to build there and break through
Wow.
and dig what they needed to. It's
That's
crazy.
interesting. That is so crazy.
Can I
So
say something
yeah.
about the quartz?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, I don't know. I'm not a huge believer in the whole like crystal thing and all that stuff. I don't know enough about it, but like scientifically speaking, certain uh stones, rocks, stuff like that vibrate at certain frequencies, and it does something, and I don't know what that something is, to the human body. So that's why the crystal thing comes in, and they say it like balances something or does something to like the human body. So I don't know, it'd be interesting, eventually to look into what crystal does or quartz does. To like the human body or whatever. But it makes me think when you said that the quartz is underneath there, which attracts like spirits or ghosts or whatever to that area. But is it also doing something to the human, like the humans that are there, since it does
Right. Isn't
vibrate?
that why vibrations
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
are, when people talk about vibes, it's actually a real thing, whether people want to think it's like a hippie thing or whatever type of dealio. But vibes are a real thing, like vibrations, even like,
Yeah.
frequencies that you listen to, or just frequencies in, sound waves, or just all of it. It's a real thing, and like how it affects your body. So yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if that
Yeah.
would be a good thing to investigate or, research. Hmm.
Yeah.
That's a
Hmm.
good point. Yeah,
Things that make
I
you
like that.
go, hmm.
That's why we're
Hmm.
here. So, not only is this an attraction to stay in for the curious and skeptical minds, but it's become like a popular wedding venue recently, from what I've read. Like, people are going and getting married at the
I
Stanley
love
Hotel.
that.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
cool.
love that.
So, I wanted to share from a website that I found called Trip Savvy. I'm sure people know about this, of the 7 most haunted spots, supposedly at the Stanley Hotel, because I thought this was interesting. I didn't read all the way through it, so it'll be kind of fun for me to, you know, hear some of the stuff or like read some of the stuff, because, just from what I saw, it was kind of interesting about, what happens in these certain spots, and they're
Before
not all
be,
rooms. Okay.
yeah, before you read, is this your first time reading it all together too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Okay. So obviously the first one is going to be room 217, where um our friend Stephen King stayed at, and where the Shining, inspiration took place. So I'm going to read this. That The room is thought to be haunted by Elizabeth Wilson, aka Mrs. Wilson. She was the hotel's head housekeeper, and during a storm in 1911, she was injured during an explosion as she was lighting the lanterns in room 217. She survived, though broke her ankles, and her spirit seems to be irregular in the room. This is interesting. I did read this part.
Hmm.
Guests have reported items moved, luggage unpacked, and lights being turned on and off. Oh, and Mrs. Wilson is old fashioned. She doesn't like it when unmarried guests shack up together. So some couples have reported feeling a cold force come between them. One of the biggest myths about this room is that it's never available. Not true. You can actually book it and stay there if you dare. But I thought that was super funny because there are actual stories that I read that people have stayed there that were unmarried and would feel like a push of somebody or force pushing
Yeah.
a
What is
couple
it?
away
Like
from
middle
each other.
school. Yeah,
Yeah.
like middle school dances 6 inches apart.
Yes. Yep. Don't touch each other.
Wow.
Nope. Not allowed.
And
So,
you know what it sounds like too is that her ghost is like unpacking their stuff and set like getting it together like what a luxury hotel would do is like set
yeah.
it up for people. And it
Yeah.
like that's what she's doing.
Yeah.
Oh. Hey, that's the
Yeah.
definition of loving your job, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. She's devoted right there.
Yeah.
So, the next one on the list is the vortex. I haven't read this one. From an architectural standpoint, the staircase between floors in the hotel's main guest house is a stunner. But the area also has been dubbed the vortex, a natural spiral of energy. It's also known as the rapid transit system for ghosts that are known to haunt the hotel. It doesn't give any more information than that, but that just sounds creepy. Like,
Yeah.
it just
Like
sounds,
that's the ghost highway.
yes, like I could just picture it. You know what I mean? That was a good visual. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like,
It makes me think of the AC/DC song, Highway to
yeah,
Hell. Dun, dun.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the
Wow.
next one is the concert hall.
Ooh.
So this one, it says there's a lot of paranormal hubbub said to be happening in this famed concert hall. Paul, one of the well known ghosts haunting the Stanley, was a jack of all trades around the hotel. Among his duties, enforcing an 11 p.m. curfew at the hotel, which could be why guests and workers here get out between being uttered late at night. The area is also a favorite spot for hotel founders Flora Stanley's ghosts to play the piano. A few of Paul's antics. Sorry, let me repeat this. A few of Paul's antics. A construction worker reported he felt Paul nudge him while he was sanding the floors, and tour groups on the Stanley Ghost Tour have reported he flickered a flashlight for them. Okay.
Oh, I know what they're talking about.
Uh,
When you go on a ghost tour, you have like all your equipment, your lights and stuff, and you try to ask
oh,
them questions. So they'll say, hey, can you, if you're here with us, can you turn the light on and off or flicker it once or
yeah.
whatever? And so he responded.
Oh, look at, like, I'm here. That's
Yeah,
cool.
that's crazy.
So another ghost known as is known to wander about concert hall as Lucy, who quite possibly was a runaway or homeless woman who found refuge in the hall. She entertains the requests of ghost hunters, often communicating with them with flashing lights. Stanley historians, however, aren't quite sure about her pre-death connection to the hotel. Have fun. And I know that there have been quite a few ghost hunters who have gone there and actually confirmed that this place is haunted.
Yeah.
So,
So
yes,
they're saying they don't know how she got
she
there or
died. Yeah, like her pre-death connection, like how she became homeless and made her like stay there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Okay, so this one's fun. Room 401. More than a century ago, the entire fourth floor was a cavernous attic. It's where female employees, children, and nannies stayed. Now, today's guests will report hearing children running around, laughing, giggling, and playing. Plus, there's a famous closet that tends to open and shut on its own in this room. So that's kind of creepy. I don't know about like the children laughing and playing. When I see that stuff in movies, I won't lie, that's creepy to me.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
just,
yeah.
that's eerie.
Mm-mm.
No. Okay, so room 428. Really, you get a badge of bravery for staying in this room on the fourth floor. I heard about this room. Bonus
Let's do
points
it.
if you. Yeah, I know. Bonus points if you
That's
can
good.
book room 428. Guests have reported hearing footsteps above them and furniture moving about, but that's actually physically impossible given the slope of the roof. Tour guides say. The real haunt in this room, though, is a friendly cowboy who appears at the corner of the bed. Gosh, could you imagine?
I would say, howdy, can you leave now?
Oh my gosh, could you imagine somebody just casually being at the, you know, nope,
Nope.
no thanks.
But I still want to stay there.
I almost like want to like try, I don't want to say debunk, but I almost want to go there to just see if any of this is real, you know?
Yeah,
It's
I
kind of
agree.
kind of fun.
I think
Okay.
that's our to-do list for
It,
this next year, coming year,
yeah,
2024.
2024. Okay, the grand staircase. Of course, the grand staircase is always going to be haunted. There's been pictures of ghosts taken on the staircase. Who knows if it's been, edited or whatever, but of course, the grand staircase. From antique mirrors and portraits, there's plenty to distract the eye on the grand staircase at the Stanley, but it could also be a popular passageway for the hotel's resident ghosts. In 2016, a visitor from Houston snapped some photos on the grand staircase and, upon returning home and reviewing them, spotted an apparatus at the top of the staircase. The thing is, he doesn't remember anybody else being on the staircase at the time he was taking the photographs. The ghostly image of a woman is at the top of the stairs. Interesting.
Is it apparatus or apparition?
Apparatus.
I've never heard that. Like well, I've heard the word but
Apparatus
not
is
used.
usually, yeah, apparatus is usually, I thought, like, like an apparatus for, um, like doing, um, you know what clowns do when they're doing like like, the stuff,
Acrobatics?
acrobatic stuff, but it's apparatus.
Oh, I
You
know
know
what
what
you're
I'm
talking
talking
about.
about? Isn't that like
Yeah.
kind of the same thing? Same. So I
Yeah,
don't know
but
what
that's what
apparatus.
I
Yeah, I
think
don't
it's
know.
supposed to
Maybe it's
say
this type.
apparition. Yeah, I think it's
Apparition.
supposed to say
Yeah.
because then they said it's an old lady, so it'd be
Yeah.
an apparition of an old
Yeah.
lady. Like, yeah,
No, it definitely says apparatus.
that's so weird.
Yeah. Okay, this one is kind of neat because I did not know there was underground caves at the Stanley. So,
What? Can you
yeah.
go in them?
Okay, if you go on the 75-minute night spirit tour at the Stanley, you don't have to be a hotel guest to get in on it, but you should book in advance. Your tour will come to an eerie halt at the end with a visit to the underground cave system. Workers moved about the hotel through the caves in the early days, so it makes sense this is a popular haunt. skeptics will pass off the haunts as a breeze from the historic piping and ventilation systems. But beneath the hotel is a higher than average concentration of limestone and quartz, which some ghost hunters believe help capture energy at the property. There's the quartz again.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. So those are said to be the top 7 most haunted spots at the Stanley.
Yeah.
But everyone, of course, wants to stay in room 217 for good reason because, The Shining. And I mean, I would probably be like, can I book in 217, 428?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it would just be kind of
One after
fun. I
another.
mean, yeah.
I want the whole experience when I go.
Right?
Yeah. I think we should do that.
I mean, like, it wouldn't bother me. It'd be fun. I think it'd be interesting to see, but it's neat to see how, circling back to Stephen King, how he, had such a traumatic experience at such a young age, but then, turned out, in my opinion, he turned out completely fine. Like, he's okay, you know what I mean? But I think a lot of those things inspired the stories and
Yeah.
the morbid curiosity
Yeah.
was there from an early age based off of maybe some of the things that had happened to him. I'm just speculating,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
feel
it's
like,
also an outlet too.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of like his stories and thought process and writing um, definitely was an outlet for all of the things that he doesn't remember or, things
Yeah.
he went through where it's there, but you may not remember it. So, I mean, it's got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, it's interesting. I don't know. I just
Mm-hmm.
found it really, really, it's inspiring also too, like all of the work that he did and how he writes phenomenally. Like, a lot of people may not like his work because it's spooky, it's horror, it's scary, I don't know. It's not for everybody. That's okay,
Yeah.
But he's great at what he does.
Yeah.
I enjoy
Despite
it.
everything that he went through,
Yeah, exactly.
he was able to do this.
I think that's super inspiring and like something to look up to,
Yeah.
Regardless of what kind of work he does, he did something with his life, irregardless of how he was raised or how he grew up. His mom did a great job raising him. Like, he never had an issue with his mom. His mom was supportive and was nothing about his mom. It was everything before,
Yeah.
his, in his primitive years, pretty much. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just super, super intriguing, to say the least.
Yeah, and I'm sure with the things that he's wrote about and the movies that have been done based on those things have inspired other people
Mm-hmm.
to do other things. Like, it's, not only did he go through all this stuff that he went through at such a young age, he was able to do something and make something of his life and kind of make like his own genre. Like, Stephen
Yeah,
King himself is like a genre, and then influence a bunch of other people in ways of other things that they would write or talk about or make movies about, or just influence people like us who like his books and his movies.
yeah, absolutely. It's really crazy how, like, I'm sure there's so many Stephen King fans out there that know all about him or whatever the case may be. But what I found interesting was just like knowing about him a little more on a personal level because it makes him as a person, not just his
Yeah.
work. You know what I mean? Because who makes a person, before they become rich and famous, you know what I mean? Or popular.
Yeah.
Like what did they go through before, all of that? So I don't know. I thought it was interesting, like researching all of this stuff and getting to know him as a person and not just separating the two, but combining them and understanding him as a person and
Yeah.
not just a writer, but how it
Yeah.
meshed the two together. So,
Yeah. And a whole new level of respect for him and everything he's been able
absolutely.
to accomplish.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, that is a little bit about Stephen King and his upbringing and his life and what led him to where he's at today. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you for all that info. I didn't know, like, The Shining's one of my favorite movies,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know some of that info. And I definitely didn't know that there's the Stanley Hotel is linked to so many different um ghosts or spirits, and I definitely want to go. That's
I
my
know, me
bucket
too.
list.
It would be cool. It would be neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, cool. That was awesome.
Well, thanks again for listening to Obscure Minds.
Thank you.